authors have their first books sitting on the shelf this week. Both were published with the goal of helping others. KCBD News Channel 11's Patricia Perry tells us about these books and how they're meeting a locally owned store's goal.
It's for anybody who just felt like, either somebody told them they were dumb and they believed them, or they just know something isn't right.
I just hope ultimately that it's a great resource that's helpful for families and kiddos, but also does the family who I'm dedicating the book to honors him well.
Two authors, two books with one common mission. Sydney Crane never thought her job title, bereavement counselor at Hospice of Lubbock, would turn her into an author.
And what I was finding when I was having conversations with families who had children on service is there wasn't really a resource to help facilitate conversations about what a terminal illness is and what different hospice workers' roles might look like when they're coming in and out of the house.
So Crane created a resource. She wrote, "I'm on hospice."
Come meet some of my hospice care team. I know they'll want to tell you all about what they do and how they help me.
Her goal is to help spark difficult conversations families and hospice care workers have with children who receive hospice care.
Divorce. It's the one thing I never planned, and trust me, I'm a planner.
Jenny Avery dreamed one day she would write a book, but she didn't plan for the topic. To help make it less scary for anyone who may be thinking of or going through divorce, she wrote her book titled The Dumb Blonde's Guide to Divorce.
I wrote this book to give readers a short, concise, and easy-to-read understanding of what happens or can happen during a divorce.
Avery says it was a book that was meant to be because she had Faith help her, starting with a pen and a to-do list notepad.
I wrote front and back on 24 pages of those, and my hand, I couldn't stop my hand. Like I couldn't get up and go. I was afraid I'd forget something, and so I don't feel like I really wrote the book. I feel like God put the book in me and said, help people.
Both books can be found on shelves in Wild Lark Books on Broadway and Avenue E. The owner, Brianne Van Rienen, has been able to help make 30 authors' dreams come true.
Really, the whole vision behind Wild Lark Books started and is founded upon wanting to break down barriers to publishing.
Van Rienen says after 30 authors, it's still surreal to get a shipment of books she helped create. We will have prices and meet and greet information on our website.